finally starting to get some nice green grass. Starting to put on pounds again.
Yeah, that one's definitely thinner than the bison I've seen up there.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing some ribs showing on this guy still. He might be just a little older.
Yeah.
And you can see he's shedding his winter coat. They look almost mangy. They're shedding their winter coat. It comes off in large chunks, large patches of fur coming off there. And Swan Lake off to our right here, shallow lake, only about 10 feet deep at its deepest point. I think there are 2 swans on Swan Lake right now.
Okay.
Currently the 2 o'clock position about 100 yards out and 150 yards out. Looks like a breeding pair. Last year, I heard that they did hatch a clutch of eggs.
Okay.
And I never saw any of their cygnets. I don't think any of them survived. The previous year, they successfully fledged 5. 5 cygnets flew off that lake 2 years ago. It's a pretty good number. They're a success story here in the park. Their numbers are stabilizing. They were on the decline for a number of years. And it seems like we got a pretty good population in the park right now. We'll get around 250 of them over winter here. And maybe about 30 of them here during the summer months. But nice to see a couple of them on Swan Lake right now. Off to the left, looks like we got 2 sandhill cranes circling. I could be wrong about that though. That's actually no, that's not sandhill cranes. That's just guessing on based on the wing size. But those look like raptors. It might be turkey vultures actually, as I'm looking to get a better view of their wingspan now. Those are turkey vultures. Turkey vultures at 9 o'clock, 100 yards out. And you might notice I'm using references to the face of a clock. I like to pretend our vehicle's like the face of a clock, with 12 o'clock straight ahead, 6 behind us, 3 to the right, 9 to the left. So if I say, oh, we got bison at 3 o'clock, that doesn't mean we'll see bison a couple hours from now.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean off to our right side. Here we're getting into lodgepole pine territory. Most of the trees here in Yellowstone are lodgepole pines. Around 70% of the park is forested, and around 70% of all the trees here are lodgepoles. Lodgepole pines don't mind the slightly acidic, nutritionally deficient soil that we have here in this relatively young landscape. Geologically speaking, 2.1 billion years, we had a big eruption here not that long ago. And there have been 2 more eruptions since then, one around 1.3 million years ago, and one around 631,000 years ago. And it takes a long time for the soil to build up. These lodgepole pines are doing a good job right now of helping to break the soil down. And then when fires burn through, which they do fairly often, every 250 years or so on average, based on the soil samples here, we see that the fires burn through and regenerate the soil. And these lodgepole pines that we're seeing to the left and the right are specifically adapted to thrive in conditions like this where fires burn through fairly regularly. Lodgepole pines produce 2 different types of cones, non-serotinous and serotinous. The serotinous cones are coated in a waxy resin that melts during the course of the fire. So the cone can open up and then scatter its seed onto nutrient-rich ash-covered soil after the fires burn through. And if you look at a nice section of land with this good sunlight, enough moisture, in the year after a fire burns through, you can count hundreds of thousands of lodgepole starts with seedlings per acre. And they grow up right next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, racing to the sky. And right now, so we're seeing trees that have regenerated following the big fires we had here in 1988. And we also noticed some mature trees right along the roadway. Park Service used a flame retardant right along the roadway to protect the roadway and keep this area open for an evacuation route. So we do see some full-grown lodgepoles. They get to about 75 feet at maturity. Once you get just a few feet away from the road, though, we're seeing relatively young lodgepole pines, about 36 years old now, growing back after those 1988 fires. And I've been doing this long enough, I have to think now, and my number's accurate. Another year has passed. 38 years now, something like that. And their density is still incredible. They're still growing right next to each other. They don't tolerate shade. Their seedlings cannot grow under their canopy. Lodgepole seedlings can't grow under the shadow of their parents. So generally, they tend to thin out, get a lot more space between the trees once they reach maturity. But here in this relatively young section of growth, they're growing right next to each other with incredible density, contributing quite a bit to the soil quality and also making a lot of good oxygen. A young forest makes a lot of good oxygen. As we get a little farther down the road, I can point out an area where we have mature lodgepole growth and get a sense for how far apart they space out over time. We had a chance to see a bear already, and a couple of bison, some swans. Generally, when people are looking for wildlife here in Yellowstone, they tend to go towards Lamar Valley, which is in the northeastern section of the park. It's along the northeast entrance road. That's where most of the wolves are going to be found in the park. You get a larger population of grizzly bears, black bears, bison, moose, elk, mule deer, a few white-tailed deer, mountain goats, bighorn sheep, pronghorn. On the west side, there's wildlife here too, but it's a lot harder to see them here because of the density of the forest. Off to our right, we'll see some reddish color, some willow growth. It makes good habitat for moose, but again, they're hard to spot because of how thick the trees are here. And we only have around 200 moose in the park right now. Or at least that's what the experts say, right around 200. Compare that to around 5,500 bison. That number's going to go up. Now's the calving time of year when bison calves are born. Most of them are born during the month of May. We've already seen a few of them show up on scene. Bison calves are born at around 40 to 80 pounds. They're a reddish color for their first 4 months, and then they'll start turning darker color like their parents. And during the summer, we might have around 10,000, maybe up to 15,000 elk in the park. Them around the Mammoth Hot Springs area, especially in the fall when they're getting into their rut. The males are bugling and sparring with the other males, vying for the attention of the females. Here we get to some of that mature lodgepole growth. Looking off to the left, we can see how far apart these trees naturally space over time. They need that much space so they can get enough sunlight. And being shade intolerant, they don't tolerate the shade. They tend to shed their lower branches. Once they've shed their lower branches, they tend to look like telephone poles with Christmas trees on top. That's one way to describe the lodgepole pines. A few of the other trees we're going to start seeing in the mix are subalpine fir. They tend to look almost like a pipe cleaner, I think. They tend to be bristled from all the way from top to bottom. They'll keep their branches from top to bottom since they don't mind the shade. They have almost a silvery colored bark, darker green needles than the lodgepoles have, and they grow taller than the lodgepoles. If you see them growing up through the lodgepole canopy, they almost look like a church steeple sticking over a city skyline. You'll see some of that darker green color in the forest coming up. After the lodgepole forest comes to maturity, some other trees make their way into the mix. You can imagine with the trees being so close together, shortly after a fire burns through, it's hard for other seeds to find their way in. But eventually, as the forest opens up through wind and animal activity, other seeds find their way in under the canopy. And given enough time, it can take hundreds of years, but given enough time, they can grow up through the lodgepole canopy. And if their numbers increase, they can even overshadow the lodgepoles. Traveling along the north shore of Yellowstone Lake, we can see an area where the spruce trees have taken over. Based on the soil samples in that area, it looks like the fire hasn't burned through there for about 1,000 years. That's the amount of time it takes for these forests really to come to their climax state as other trees make their way in. And chances are another fire is going to burn through before that happens. There are a few areas we can point out where we have mature stands of spruce and fir. But generally speaking, other fires burn through, clear the slate, and start the process all over again. So you can realistically say these lodgepoles literally count on fire for their survival, not as individuals, but as a species, as a forest. Without the fires, other trees make their way in and take over. cliff off to our left side. And on a day like today, we might be able to see some glittery black color in that rock where there are sections of pure obsidian. Obsidian is sometimes referred to as volcanic glass. It's made of the same stuff as rhyolite, same stuff as golden gate that we saw back there as they were coming up onto the plateau. But it cools very quickly. It cools so fast that crystals don't have a chance to grow. So it makes a glassy consistency that fractures to a very sharp edge. And this obsidian and this rock outcropping coming up is a very important resource for making projectile points like arrowheads, spearheads, also for making knives, carving tools, scraping tools. This is obsidian cliff off to our left right now.
Good night.
And of course, being a national park, if we were to go on a hike and find some obsidian, we wouldn't be able to collect it. Wouldn't be able to take that home as a souvenir. We'd have to keep that right where it is, leave it right where it is. So other people can enjoy that later on.
Yeah.
Of course, it'd be the same rule for wildflowers. We're not allowed to pick any of the wildflowers here. We just enjoy them as they grow. And some of the biologists like to say it's even worse to pick up the rocks than it is to collect the wildflowers, because it takes so much longer for the rocks to grow back.
Yeah.
Right about this point, you're probably starting to wonder, is this guy ever going to shut up? Is he just going to be telling silly jokes the whole time? Going on and on? I might. Although, really, I know Yellowstone has its way of speaking to us as individuals in its own unique way. And I don't like to interrupt when that's happening, so there will be some periods of quiet here, too. Along the drive here, we get just a little time together today. If you have any questions along the way, please do shout out. I might know the answer. If I don't know the answer, I'll just tell you I don't know the answer. But opening the floor to any questions as we make our way toward Canyon. closer to the area that's directly above the magma chamber. We have Clearwater Spring over to our right. Hot water bubbling up out of the ground at around 145 degrees Fahrenheit. And coming up to our left, you're starting to get a view of Roaring Mountain. Roaring Mountain is a hillside covered in steam vents. At this elevation, we're about 7,400 feet of elevation here. Water boils at around 202 degrees Fahrenheit. And of course, steam is not limited to a boiling temperature. It can be even hotter than that. So some of these steam vents on Roaring Mountain, now directly to our left, maybe even hotter than 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Patch of water on North Twin Lake off to our right. There are hot springs that flow under North Twin Lake, and they keep the ice from building up off of the far right corner as we're looking at it back there. Just south of North Twin Lake is another lake of similar shape and similar size. Anyone want to guess what the name of this lake might be?
South Twin Lake?
South Twin Lake. You're looking at your map. You got that already? Nicely done.
Wild guess.
South Twin Lake does freeze over completely during the winter. There is some hot water flowing under there, but not nearly as much as North Twin Lake has. And on a really cold day, that one will freeze over completely. And because there is hot water flowing here in Yellowstone, and some of these lakes and rivers have open water during the winter, it makes Yellowstone a great place for waterfowl to spend the winter. And that's why we get more swans here in the winter than we get this summer. We also get a number of different geese and ducks. Barrow's goldeneye, common goldeneye, teal, green, a whole long list of ducks you can find here during the summer and in the winter. It's that open water that makes this a great place for the waterfowl in the winter. Spring off to the right side here. Some of these features have been doing what they're doing for a very long time. Yellowstone had its 150th birthday 4 years ago. We have documentation of some of the features here dating that far back, and even a little farther. There were some expeditions that came through this area in 1869, 1870, 1871. Scientists on those expeditions named a great number of these features, including Old Faithful. That was named during the Washburn expedition of 1870. There's some new features here too. Off to the right, we have Nymph Lake. And if you look to the right side of Nymph Lake as we're looking at it, there's some steam coming from the hillside. A white colored patch on the hillside just to the right of Nymph Lake as we're looking at it. Those are relatively young. Those opened up back in 2003.
Oh, good. Right, that's recent. Funny fact, that expedition you were talking about, some newspapers back east refused to print their signings of their findings because they thought their readers wouldn't believe them, and it would damage the credibility of their papers. They didn't believe some of these.
There's some truth to that. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Some of the stories that were coming out of this area, even by reputable sources like Washburn and Ferdinand Vanderveer Hayden, head of the U.S. Geological Survey.
Yeah.
This place was And maybe that has something to do with the fact that there were a lot of tall tales coming out of this area in the years prior.
Yeah.
Dating back to the early 1800s, there were fur trappers like Jim Bridger
Yeah.
and John Coulter. Coulter broke off of the Lewis and Clark expedition, the Corps of Discovery, what we now call the Lewis and Clark expedition. Coulter got permission to break off to do some fur trapping in this area. After they made it to the Pacific and they were on their way back, under the condition that nobody else would make a similar request, Coulter got permission to travel through this area.
Yeah.
And he probably followed the Yellowstone River, probably walked right past Yellowstone Lake, may have walked down into the Teton area. When he finally went back through St. Louis, made his way back to Washington, D.C., he had some stories to tell about sulfur brimstone, as he described it, blue flames shooting up out of the earth. I've never seen any blue flames here myself. I mean, some of those stories were fantastical.
Yeah.
Considered to be tall tales. Those stories earned him a reputation for being either insane or a certified liar.
Yeah.
That's partly why some scientists came along on those missions, and also why a painter, Thomas Moran, and a photographer, William Henry Jackson, came along on some of those later surveys to bring back visual evidence to corroborate some of the stories that were being told.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jim Bridger was another teller of tales. He probably crossed over Specimen Ridge, which sits just southwest of Lamar Valley. And there are standing petrified trees on Specimen Ridge. And maybe Jim Bridger saw those. He may have seen other petrified trees in this area. But he told stories about a petrified forest, where in the petrified trees there are petrified birds who sing petrified songs.
Yeah.
It's all nonsense, right? It would have been good storytelling around the campfire, good for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
Not so good for conveying factual information about the area. But yeah, people were generally a little reluctant to believe some of the stories that were being told about this area. It just seemed a little too good to be true, a little too far-fetched. People described geysers as inverted waterfalls. The water flowed upward from the ground.
Yeah.
I wouldn't believe that if somebody told me about that.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to see something like that for yourself.
Yeah.
And of course, these days everything's very well documented.
Yeah.
It's amazing what a difference 160 years makes.
Yep.
But before that time, this area was literally a blank spot on the map. Terra Incognita, it was called. Just a blank spot on the map, unknown land. It was right around the same time. It was right after the railroads made their way all the way across the continent. That facilitated some of the exploration of this area for getting more equipment in and making travel easier. The Yellowstone area was explored right around the same time as Powell was doing his survey of Grand Canyon area. And Clarence King was doing his survey, the 40th parallel survey from the Bay Area of California out toward Green River. Uinta Range. A lot of exploration going on around that same time. Very difficult terrain was being explored. It was right around that time that this area was being more thoroughly known. And right around the same time that this place became the world's first national park.
Yeah.
Norris Geyser Basin off to our right side. If we were to make a right turn here, we go into the Norris Geyser Basin parking area. Continuing straight ahead, we would be making our way toward the Old Faithful area. About another 30 miles to go to get there. We're going to be making a left turn here.
Yeah.
If you look at a road map of the park, the road system kind of looks like a figure 8.
Yeah.
And we're about to be making a left turn onto the section that goes between Norris Junction and Canyon Village, going across the middle of that figure 8 road system. Norris Geyser Basin right back there sits at the intersection of two fault lines and a ring fracture left behind after massive volcanic eruption. Because it sits at the intersection of those faults and fractures, there's the opportunity for venting to take place. And Norris Geyser Basin is the home of Steamboat Geyser, the world's tallest geyser. It erupt to about 380 feet high. It's the hottest, most acidic geyser basin in the park. So as we're making our way over toward Canyon, we're basically riding right along the northern edge of the caldera, of the big crater left behind after the big eruptions happened here. And the crater itself is huge. It's about 30 miles by 45 miles across. It's so big it's hard to see it. And if you imagine asking a 5-year-old to draw a picture of a volcano, you're probably going to get a neat conically shaped mountain with a nearly perfect circle on top. We don't have something like that here. It's just a big crumbly mess of the ground, a big crumbly hole where the magma chamber blasted out a bunch of hot rock and ash, and where that material had been, the landscape just collapsed in on itself after that ash matter was blasted out. Those of you working in the restaurants here, you might see an item on some of the dessert menus called the caldera. It's a round piece of chocolate torte cake with a molten chocolate center. Kind of a fun representation of what's happened here in the past. It's not to scale, of course. Yeah. But if you imagine popping a straw through the middle of that chocolate cake and slurping out that delicious chocolate center, you'd have displacement where that molten center had been. After you slurp it out, the cake just collapses in on itself, making a big crumbly mess. It's kind of a fun representation of what we have just south of us here. And in the years following those big eruptions, there's been a series of lava flows. Around 24, 25, a couple dozen separate lava flows. The most recent one happened about 72,000 years ago. And those lava flows have partially filled in the old crater, making it even more difficult to discern where the big crater actually is. Again, we're riding right along the northern edge of it as we make our way over toward the canyon village. We got about 12 miles to go. Over the Gibbon River. The Gibbon River flows out of the Washburn mountain range, which is just north of Canyon Village. And the river flows through a series of lakes. We just passed a trailhead sign for Ice Lake. A sign for Wolf Lake coming up. That river also flows through Grebe Lake. If you're looking to do some hiking here in the canyon area, that's a fun trail to take. You can even start at Cascade Lake, which is closer to the canyon village. And you take that trail all the way over to the west side, going along that series of lakes as you go. coming from sea level or close to it?
Yeah, about the highest point in Delaware is only 60 feet above sea level.
If you're coming from sea level or close to it, you're probably going to feel it for a few weeks.
Yeah.
It can take a little time to get acclimated.
Yeah.
You might feel a little shortness of breath. Always a good idea to avoid altitude sickness. Make sure you stay well hydrated.
Yeah.
That's just a great general rule around here. It's hard to stay hydrated here. The air is thin.
Yeah.
It's surprising what a difference it makes being a few thousand feet closer to the sun.
Yeah.
I tend to think in terms of trying to drink about a gallon of water per day is a good goal. Of course, depending on your body weight.
Yeah.
Don't overdo it.
Yeah.
But don't underdo it either. Make sure you get enough water to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Also, make sure you get enough rest, especially during the first week or so. Especially during the first day or two. It's a big change. It's a big shift.
Yeah.
Give your body some time to acclimate. Lots of rest, eat well, lots of water. And as you come to Yellowstone, there's just so much to see, so much to do. We've got 2.2 million acres here.
Yeah.
We've got over 1,000 miles of hiking trails. It can be pretty exciting. It can be stimulus overload. Don't try to see it all. You can spend a lifetime here and not see the whole thing. Don't try to overdo it.
Okay.
Be sure you get out there some.
Oh, yeah.
Especially my
that
first
would
few years here. This is my 20th season coming up.
Yeah.
My first couple of years, I hiked hundreds of miles.
Yeah.
Probably about 500 miles in my second summer alone. I have just a really good crew of people to hike with. And that makes all the difference. Having a bunch of good hiking buddies makes a really good summer. As a general rule, good to be in a group of 7 or so when you're out there. I have been charged by a grizzly bear before. The bigger group you're in, the better your chances of surviving that kind of encounter are.
Yeah.
So buddy up, make some friends. Find out who's got the same kind of shifts that you do, and